Kim Taiho had stood in this chamber 112 times. He knew every crack in the polished floor, every flicker in the ancient lights that hung from the ceiling like frozen stars. He knew the smell of the place, that strange mix of recycled air and alien perfumes that never quite felt right in his lungs. Most of all, he knew the faces of the beings who sat in judgment above him, arranged in their high seats like gods, looking down at something small and disappointing. Today would be the last time. The council chamber of Helios 9 was built to make visitors feel small. The ceiling rose so high that clouds of condensation sometimes formed near the top. The seats of the 12 ruling species circled the central platform where petitioners stood, forcing them to turn and turn again to address each delegate. It was designed to remind everyone who held the power here, Taiho stopped being impressed by it years ago. High Arbiter Velos. His gray skin stretched tight over a skull that seemed too large for his thin neck, read from a glowing tablet. His voice echoed through the chamber, flat and bored. The petition for permanent council membership, submitted by the Human Collective for the 47th time, has been reviewed by all member species. Taiho waited. He already knew what was coming. The petition is denied, Velos continued. Humanity remains too young, too unstable, and too prone to violence for full membership. This decision is final and may not be appealed for another standard year.
All around the chamber.
Delegates shifted in their seats. Some looked uncomfortable. Others smiled with barely hidden pleasure. Senior Delegate Oren, whose people had voted against humanity every single time, leaned forward with satisfaction written across his flat-scaled face. "Does the human ambassador wish to make a statement?" Velos asked. It was a formality. They expected Taiho to argue, to plead, to remind them of everything humanity had done for the council. He had done it 46 times before. Taiho looked up at the circle of faces. He thought about the human doctors who had stopped 3 plagues in the outer colonies. He thought about the engineers who had rebuilt the Keith atmospheric processors when no one else could figure out the problem. He thought about the soldiers who had died protecting Tirani merchant ships from raiders, receiving nothing but complaints about their methods in return. He thought about all of it. Then he bowed, low and formal in the human way. "I have no statement," he said quietly. "Thank you for your time." He gathered the documents from his desk. He straightened his uniform. And without another word, he walked toward the great doors at the far end of the chamber. Behind him, it was confused silence. This was not how it was supposed to go. The human was supposed to argue. The human was supposed to beg. That was the entertainment. Ambassador Kim Velos called out, "You have nothing to say? No appeal? No reminder of human sacrifices?" Taiho stopped at the door. He did not turn around. "You have made your position clear," he said. "So have we." The doors closed behind him. Park Yuno was waiting in the corridor outside. She was young, barely 30, but she had been Taiho's aide for 5 years. She had learned to read his face better than anyone. When she saw him now, she understood immediately. "It's time," she asked. Taiho nodded. "Send the message. Protocol quiet tide. Effective immediately." Yuna pulled out her communicator. Her fingers moved across the screen without hesitation. Somewhere far away, on a blue planet circling a yellow star, receivers would light up with the signal they had been waiting for. Plans that had been prepared for years would finally be put into action. "Done," she said. They walked together through the corridors of Helios 9. Around them, the station hummed with life. Aliens of a dozen species moved past, most of them ignoring the 2 humans. A few nodded in greeting. 1 or 2 looked away quickly, embarrassed or hostile. "How long do you think it will take them to notice?" Yuna asked. Taiho smiled, but there was no joy in it. "Longer than you might expect. They have never paid much attention to us, unless they needed something." Within 12 hours, the first human ships began leaving council space. They departed quietly, without announcements or fanfare. Medical vessels pulled away from stations where they had been treating the sick. Engineering teams packed their tools and boarded transport ships. Soldiers handed over their posts to confused replacements, and walked away without looking back. Within 24 hours, the human embassy on Helios 9 was empty except for a single liaison officer. The furniture was gone. The computers were wiped. Even the plants that Una had kept on her desk had been carefully packed and shipped home. Within 48 hours, every human-operated patrol route in the outer territories was abandoned. The ships simply stopped coming. The beacons went dark. Within 72 hours, humanity was gone. The Council barely noticed. High Arbiter Velos received a report about the embassy closure and dismissed it as a tantrum. "They will return," he said confidently. "They always do. Humans cannot resist trying to prove themselves." Delegate Oren laughed at the news. "Good riddance. Perhaps now we can conduct business without their constant interference." The Keth Mining Consortium sent a message asking when the human engineers would return to complete scheduled maintenance. They received an automated reply stating that all human services had been permanently withdrawn. They assumed it was a computer error. The Valerie Medical Council tried to contact Dr. Choi Nari about an upcoming treatment protocol. Her communication line had been disconnected. They made a note to try again later. The Tirani Merchant Guild noticed that their escort ships had not arrived for the weekly convoy. They filed a complaint with the council. The complaint was added to a queue and marked as low priority. Life continued as normal. The great machine of galactic civilization kept turning, and no one stopped to wonder about the small human parts that had quietly removed themselves from the mechanism far away. On Earth, Ambassador Kim Tai-ho stepped off his transport ship and breathed real air for the first time in 15 years. It was autumn. The leaves were changing color. Children were playing in a park nearby, their laughter carrying on the wind. His wife was waiting for him at the terminal. She had gray in her hair now. They had spent so much time apart. "Is it over?" she asked. Taeho took her hand. "Our part is over," he said. "Now we wait." Now they learn what it means to be alone. Above them, the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there in the cold emptiness between worlds, the first cracks were already beginning to form. The council just did not know it yet, but they would. They would learn. The first sign of trouble came from the Keth mining colonies 3 months after the humans left. The atmospheric processors on Keth Prime had been running smoothly for 40 years. They were magnificent machines, each one as tall as a mountain, breathing life into a world that had been born dead. The Keth had built the shells, the massive structures of metal and stone, but the hearts of the machines, the delicate systems that balanced oxygen and nitrogen and 100 other gases in perfect harmony, those had been designed by human engineers. When the first processor began to fail, the Keth were not worried. They had manuals. They had diagrams. They had watched the humans work for decades. How difficult could it be? Very difficult, as it turned out. The Keth engineer stared at the console, his forearms moving uselessly over controls he did not understand. Warning lights flashed in patterns that meant nothing to him. The manual was open on the screen beside him, but the words seemed to dance and blur together. "Contact the human maintenance team," he ordered. "Sir?" his assistant said quietly. "There is no human maintenance team. They left 3 months ago. Then contact Earth. Demand they send replacements." "We have tried, sir." 7 times. They do not respond. The processor coughed. Somewhere deep in its mechanical heart, something important broke. The air quality in the eastern district of Keth Prime dropped by 12% in a single hour by the end of the week. 2 more processors had failed. The Keth began evacuating their cities, far away. On the medical station orbiting Viller Prime, a different kind of disaster was unfolding. The blood plague had first appeared among the Villari 20 years ago. It was a cruel disease that attacked slowly, turning the purple blood of its victims into something thick and poisonous. Without treatment, death came within 6 months. With treatment, infected could live normal lives. The treatment had been developed by Dr. Choi Nari. She had spent 15 years on that station, caring for patients, training local doctors, and refining her methods. She had saved thousands of lives. When the withdrawal order came, she had packed her bags with tears in her eyes. She had tried to train the Valari doctors to continue her work. She had left detailed instructions. But medicine was not just knowledge. It was instinct. It was experience. It was the ability to see what others missed. The Valari doctors missed a lot. The first deaths came quietly. A patient here, a patient there. Mistakes were made. Doses were calculated incorrectly. Warning signs were overlooked. Within 2 months, the death rate had tripled. Healer Soren, the senior Valari physician, sat in his office with his head in his hands. On his desk was a list of names. Patients who had died under his care. Patients he had not been able to save. "We need the human doctor back," he said to his assistant. "Send another message to Earth." "I've sent 53 messages," his assistant replied. "They do not respond." "Then send a 54th. The message went out. Like all the others, it disappeared into the void. The Tyranny Merchant Guild discovered their problem in the worst possible way. The Golden Path. Convoy was carrying goods worth more than most planets produced in a year. Luxury items, rare minerals, advanced technology. It was the most valuable shipment of the season. Traveling along a route that had been safe for decades. Safe because human patrol ships had kept it that way. The raiders came out of the asteroid field like ghosts. Their ships were fast and brutal, armed with weapons that the merchants had no hope of fighting. The convoy captain sent a distress signal to the human patrol that should have been nearby. No response. He sent another signal, then another. Nothing but silence. The raiders took everything. They killed anyone who resisted. When they were finished, they disappeared back into the asteroids, leaving behind burning wreckage and floating bodies. The Tyranny merchants filed an angry complaint with the Galactic Council. They demanded to know why the human patrols had abandoned their posts. They demanded compensation. They demanded action. "High Arbiter?" Velos read the complaint with a frown. He turned to Delegate Orin, who suddenly looked less confident than he had 3 months ago. "Where are the humans?" Velos asked. "Why have they not responded to our summons?" Orin shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I am sure they are simply making a point. They will return soon enough. They have not responded to any communication in 3 months. We have sent 17 official demands. All have been ignored. Humans are emotional creatures. They are having a tantrum. It will pass." But it did not pass. Li Doyon was the only human left in council space. He had volunteered to stay behind as a liaison, though his duties were limited. He spent most of his time reading, exercising, and politely refusing to help anyone. When the council finally summoned him, he walked into the chamber with a calm smile on his face. "Where are your people?" Velos demanded. "Why do they not answer our calls?" Doyen looked up at the circle of anxious faces. It was strange to see them worried. For decades, they had looked down at humans with contempt or dismissal. Now, there was something new in their eyes. Fear. "Humanity has withdrawn its services," Doyen said simply. "You made it clear we were not wanted here. We have respected your wishes, but you cannot simply leave." Delegate Orange shouted. "You have obligations, agreements, duties." Doyen pulled out a small tablet. He tapped it, and a document appeared on the main display screen. "This is the service agreement between the Human Collective and the Galactic Council. Page 47, Section 12. All services provided by humanity are voluntary and may be withdrawn at any time without penalty. Your legal experts approved this language 60 years ago. You did not think we would ever use it." The chamber was silent. "But you needed us," Doyen continued. "You needed our doctors, our engineers, our soldiers. But you did not want to admit it. You wanted our help without giving us respect. You wanted our sacrifices without giving us a seat at your table." He smiled again, but there was no warmth in it. "Now you have neither. What do you want?" Velos asked. His voice was almost pleading. "Name your price. We will negotiate." Doyen shook his head slowly. "You had 47 chances to negotiate. You refused every time. There is nothing left to discuss." He bowed. The same formal bow that Ambassador Kim Tai-ho had given 3 months ago. The council watched him go. They did not know what to say. They did not know what to do. Outside the chamber, Doyan stopped by a window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, his people were building a new future. A future without the council. A future where humanity would never again beg for scraps of recognition from beings who despised them. He touched the glass gently. "Good luck," he whispered to the aliens behind him. "You are going to need it." 1 year had passed since the withdrawal, and Captain Beek Soo-jin had learned to live with the weight of watching her ship. The silent witness held position at the edge of council space. It was a small vessel, barely visible against the darkness, equipped with sensors that could see halfway across a star system. Her crew of 12 had a simple mission: observe, record, and do not intervene. That last part was the hardest. Soo-jin stood at the observation deck, a cup of cold tea in her hands, watching a distant planet burn. It was a Tarani colony, one of their oldest settlements. Raiders had attacked it 3 days ago. Without human patrols to protect them, the Tarani had been defenseless. Now the cities were on fire, and refugee ships were streaming away like blood from a wound. "Captain," her communications officer said softly, "we are receiving distress signals. They are asking for help." Soo-jin closed her eyes. She could hear the signals in the background. Voices crying out in languages she had learned to understand over years of service. Mothers calling for their children. Pilots begging for rescue. The sounds of a civilization falling apart. "Log them," she said. "Archive everything. We have weapons. We have medical supplies. Our orders are clear. We observe. We do not intervene." The officer wanted to argue. Soo-jin could see it in his face. But he had been trained too well. He turned back to his console and continued recording the death of a world. Soo-jin took a sip of her cold tea. It tasted like nothing. This was the 3rd disaster she had watched this month. The Volari medical crisis had become a full pandemic. The Keth mining colonies were empty now, their populations scattered across refugee stations that could barely hold them. Trade routes that had once been safe were now hunting grounds for pirates and raiders. The council was falling apart, and humanity was watching it happen. Far away, on the human colony world of New Seoul, Admiral Yoon Ji-ho received the council's latest delegation. They came in a ship that was too large and too fancy, as if they still believed that showing off their wealth would impress the humans. They walked down the landing ramp in their finest robes, expecting to be treated as honored guests. Ji-ho met them in a simple meeting room with plastic chairs and a coffee machine in the corner. He did not bow. He did not smile. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing for them to sit. "Would you like some coffee?" High Arbiter Velos looked at the plastic chair with barely hidden disgust. His aide whispered something about diplomatic protocol, but Velos waved him away. They had come too far to leave now. Admiral Yoon Velos began. "We must discuss the return of human services to Council space. The situation has become critical." "I am aware of the situation," Ji-ho said. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat down across from them. "We have been watching, then you know that thousands are dying. Planets are falling to raiders. Our infrastructure is collapsing. We need your help." Ji-ho nodded slowly. "Yes, you do." He tapped a button on the table, and a screen lit up on the wall behind him. Images began to appear. Documents, reports, records. "This is the archive of human service to the Galactic Council," Ji-ho said. "It covers 217 years of cooperation." The screen showed a list of numbers. Plague stopped, 47. Planets. Saved from environmental collapse, 23 raider. Attacks prevented, over. 8,000 lives saved by human medical. Intervention, 2.3 billion. And here Ji-ho continued. "Is the record of how that service was repaid?" New images appeared. Transcripts of council meetings, where humans were mocked and insulted. News articles from alien media calling humanity primitive, dangerous, and unworthy. Footage of Delegate Oren laughing as he voted against human membership for the 35th time. 47 petitions for equal representation, Ji-ho said quietly. 47 rejections. Your people took our help, used our sacrifices, and gave us nothing but contempt in return. Velos shifted uncomfortably. There were mistakes made. We acknowledge this. But surely what? Jiho interrupted. Surely we will forgive and forget. Surely we will come running back to save you again, just because you finally realized you need us. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the colony stretched to the horizon. Clean streets. Happy children. A world built by humans, for humans, without the Council's interference. Do you know what we found when we withdrew? Jiho asked. Peace. For the first time in 200 years, our people are not dying for strangers who despise them. Our doctors are healing our own sick. Our engineers are building our own cities. Our soldiers are protecting our own families. He turned back to face the delegation. We are happy, High Arbiter. We are finally, truly happy. And you want us to give that up? To return to being your servants? Your tools? Your emergency solution that you call whenever things go wrong? Velos tried to speak, but Jiho raised a hand to stop him. I have one question for you. In all those years, in all those meetings, did any of you ever once say thank you? The silence was answer enough. You wanted us gone, Jiho said. So we left. Now, you live with the consequences. What would it take for you to return? Velos asked. His voice was small now, almost a whisper. Jiho thought about the question. He thought about the soldiers who had died on alien worlds buried in foreign soil. He thought about the doctors who had worked themselves to death saving patients who would never know their names. He thought about Ambassador Kim Tai-ho, standing alone in that great chamber, finally walking away. It is no longer our concern, he said, Captain. Sujin was still at her observation post when the council delegation departed from New Seoul. She watched their ship pass through her sensor range. Moving slowly back toward council space, her communications officer spoke up. Captain, we have received a message from command. New orders. Sujin turned. What are they? We are being recalled. Our mission is complete. She looked back at the stars one last time. Out there, civilizations were dying. Worlds were falling silent. A great empire was crumbling into dust, and humanity was done watching. Set course for home, she said, as the witness turned away from council space. Sujin allowed herself a single moment of grief for all the lives she could not save. Then she straightened her shoulders and walked to her command chair. Behind her, the universe continued to burn, but that was no longer humanity's problem. 2 years after the withdrawal, the Galactic Council met for what would be its final session. The great chamber on Helios 9 was almost empty now. Of the 12 founding species, only 7 had sent representatives. The others were too busy fighting their own battles, dealing with their own disasters, or simply too ashamed to face the others. High Arbiter, Velos looked older than he had ever looked before. His gray skin had turned pale, almost white. His hands trembled as he held his documents. The confidence that had defined him for centuries was gone, replaced by something that looked very much like despair. The council recognizes Delegate Moran of the Keth Collective, he announced, his voice barely above a whisper. Moran rose from his seat. He was thin and tired, his forearms hanging loose at his sides. Once, the Keth had been proud warriors and builders. Now they were refugees, scattered across stations and planets that did not want them. The Keth Collective is disbanding, Moran said simply. We no longer have the resources to maintain our representation. Our people are leaving the outer territories. We are going to find somewhere else to live. Somewhere far from here? Velos nodded slowly. The council acknowledges the withdrawal of the Keth Collective. The Keth wish to make one final statement, Moran continued. We voted against the humans. 32 times, we voted against giving them a seat at this table. We told ourselves they were too young, too aggressive, too dangerous. He paused and looked around the chamber. We were fools. We had friends and we threw them away. Now we pay the price. He walked out of the chamber without waiting for a response. The doors closed behind him with a sound like a tomb sealing shut, one by one. The other delegates made similar announcements. The Terrani were leaving. The Valari were leaving. The Moran Federation had fractured into a dozen smaller groups, each blaming the others for the disaster. By the end of the session, only Velos and 2 other delegates remained. The Galactic Council is hereby suspended indefinitely, Velos announced to the empty room. May history judge us fairly, but history would not be kind. Everyone knew that. On the human colony of Luna, historian Han Minji was putting the final touches on her research. She had spent 2 years studying the collapse. She had read thousands of documents, conducted hundreds of interviews, and analyzed data from across the galaxy. Now she was ready to publish her findings. Her office was small, but comfortable. Books lined the walls, real paper books that she had collected over the years. A window looked out at the blue-green earth hanging in the black sky. It's beautiful and peaceful. Her assistant, a young man named Kong Junho, brought her a cup of tea. The report is ready for publication, he said. Are you sure you want to release it? Some people might not like what you have written. Minji smiled. The truth is rarely popular, but it must be told. Oh. She looked at the document on her screen. The title read, The Glue That Held Them Together, Humanity's Role in Galactic Stability. Her research had revealed something that the Council had never understood. Humanity had not just been helpers and servants. They had been the foundation that held everything together, not through military power or political influence, but through something much simpler. They had cared when the Keth had problems with their processors. Humans did not just fix the machines. They trained local workers, built schools, and created partnerships. When the Valari had their plague, humans did not just treat patients. They built hospitals, developed prevention programs, and taught medical techniques. Humans had connected the species of the Council in ways that no one had noticed. They had been the translators, the mediators, the bridge builders. They had smoothed over conflicts, found compromises, and kept ancient enemies from destroying each other. Without them, there was nothing holding the Council together, and so it had fallen apart. Minji pressed the button to publish her report. Within hours, it would be read across human space. Within days, it would spread to what remained of the Council territories. Perhaps it would help someone understand. Perhaps not. Either way, the truth was now out there. Far from Luna, in a place that had no name, former Delegate Orin sat alone in a dark room. He had been exiled by his own people. They blamed him for the disaster, and they were right to blame him. He had been the loudest voice against humanity. He had mocked them, insulted them, and celebrated every time their petitions were rejected. Now, he lived in a small station on the edge of nowhere. Surrounded by people who hated him, he wrote a message. His hands shook as he typed the words. Ambassador Taiho, I know you have no reason to read this. I know you have no reason to respond. But I must say what I should have said years ago. I was wrong. We were all wrong. You offered us friendship and we threw it back in your faces. You offered us help and we laughed at you. Please, I am not asking you to save us. I am asking you to forgive us. I know I do not deserve it, but I am asking anyway. He sent the message before he could change his mind. Then he sat back and waited on Earth. Ambassador Kim Taiho received the message on a quiet afternoon. He was retired now, living in a small house near the sea. He spent his days reading, gardening, and watching the waves roll in. His wife was in the kitchen preparing dinner. The smell of cooking food drifted through the open window. He read Orin's message twice. He thought about the years he had spent fighting for recognition. He thought about the friends he had lost, the sacrifices he had made, the dreams that had been crushed again and again. He thought about forgiveness. Then he deleted the message without reply. Some things could not be undone. Some wounds could not be healed. Orin would have to live with his choices, just as Taiho had learned to live with his. Outside, the sun was setting. The sky turned orange and pink and purple, colors so beautiful that Taiho forgot about the message for a moment. He stepped outside and watched the light fade over the ocean. His wife came to stand beside him. Who was that message from? She asked. Nobody important, Taiho said. Not anymore. They stood together in silence as the stars began to appear. Somewhere up there, empires were falling. Species that had ruled for millennia were learning what it meant to be alone. But here, on this small planet, in this small house by the sea, there was only peace. Humanity had finally found its home, and they were never going to leave it again. 10 years had passed since humanity withdrew from the galaxy. In that time, everything had changed. The great stations of the Galactic Council orbited empty and silent. Their lights had gone dark years ago. Their halls, which had once echoed with the voices of 100 species, were now filled only with dust and forgotten memories. Occasionally, a salvage ship would pass by and strip away something valuable. No one tried to stop them. There was no one left to care. The species that had once ruled the galaxy were scattered now. The Keth had found a new home on the far edge of known space, rebuilding their civilization brick by brick. The Valari had retreated to their homeworld and closed their borders to outsiders. The Turani had split into dozens of small trading groups, each fighting for scraps of what remained. The Great Council was gone. The Golden Age was over. The galaxy had entered a new era, one defined by silence and survival, but not for humanity. In a region of space that the old Council had dismissed as worthless, a new power was rising. The Frontier Accord had been formed 5 years after the withdrawal. It was an alliance of species that the Council had ignored or despised. The Rel, a peaceful race of scholars who had been rejected for membership 12 times. The Karsho, skilled craftspeople whose technology had been stolen and copied without credit. And dozens of others who had learned the hard way that the Council cared nothing for those it considered lesser. Humanity had reached out to them first. Not as conquerors or masters, but as equals. They had offered friendship without conditions. They had shared technology without demanding payment. They had protected the weak without asking for recognition. The accord grew stronger every year. New species joined. Trade routes expanded. A civilization built on mutual respect was slowly taking shape. Elder Moon Hajun stood before the Accord's assembly hall on the 10th anniversary of its founding. He was old now, the oldest living human diplomat, and this would be his final address before retirement. The hall was nothing like the council chamber on Helios 9. It was round instead of tall, so that everyone could see each other at eye level. The seats were comfortable and simple. There were no thrones for the powerful, no pits for the petitioners. Everyone was equal here, Friends Hajun began, his voice still strong despite his years. We gather today to remember where we came from and to celebrate how far we have come. The assembly was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had forms that humans still struggled to describe, but all of them listened with respect. 10 years ago, humanity made a choice, Hajun continued. We chose to walk away from those who did not want us. We chose to build something new with those who did. It was not an easy choice. Many of our people had given their lives to the old council. Many more had believed in its promises. He paused and looked around the room. But we learned a valuable lesson. True partnership cannot be forced. It cannot be begged for. It can only be offered and accepted by those who understand its worth. He smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across his weathered face. You understood? All of you. When we reached out, you reached back. When we offered friendship, you offered it in return. Together, we have built something that the Council never could. Not an empire. Not a hierarchy. A community. The assembly applauded. Hajun bowed slightly in acknowledgement. I will retire soon, he said. My work is nearly done. But I leave knowing that the future is in good hands. The Frontier Accord will continue to grow. It will continue to welcome those who seek a place where they belong. And it will never forget the lesson that brought us together. He straightened his shoulders and spoke his final words clearly. We offered them our hands. They slapped them away. And when we finally stopped reaching out, they discovered how empty the universe could be without us. Let us never make that mistake ourselves. Let us always remember that our strength comes from standing together. The applause continued long after he left the stage, far across the galaxy. In a dying station, orbiting a dead world, the last survivors of the old council species gathered around a failing transmitter. There were only a few hundred of them left. They had been trying to survive for years, moving from station to station as each one failed. Now they had nowhere else to go. The transmission was aimed at human space. It was a plea, an apology, a desperate cry for help. "We know we have no right to ask this," the message said. "We know what we did. We know how we treated you. But please, we are dying. Our children are dying. If there is any mercy left in the universe, please help us." The message traveled across the stars. It passed through relay stations and communication networks. It reached human space and was logged in a database. It was read by a junior communications officer on a routine shift. She noted the content, marked it as received, and filed it according to protocol. It was never forwarded. It was never discussed. It simply sat in the database. One message among millions, the station sent the message again and again over the following weeks. Each time, it was received, logged, and filed. Each time, nothing happened. Eventually, the station's power failed. The transmitter went dark. The last voices of the old council fell silent. And somewhere, in a database on a human world, their message remained unread, unanswered, forgotten, on Earth. In the city of Busan, there stood a memorial. It was a simple thing. Just a wall of white stone with names carved into its surface. Thousands of names. The names of every human who had died serving the Galactic Council. Soldiers and doctors. Engineers and diplomats. Parents and children who had given everything for a cause they believed in. At the base of the wall, a single inscription read, "They asked for our help. We gave everything. They asked us to leave. We did." Some lessons are only learned through loss. Commander Shin Bora visited the memorial every year on the anniversary of the withdrawal. She had been one of the last to leave Council space, escorting refugee ships until the very end. She had seen things she would never forget today. She came with her daughter, a young woman who had been born after the withdrawal. The daughter had grown up hearing stories about the old days, but they seemed like ancient history to her. She could not imagine a time when humans had served others who despised them. "Why do you come here every year?" the daughter asked. Bora looked at the wall of names. She found the ones she was looking for. Friends she had lost, colleagues who had never come home. "To remember," she said. "To remember what we gave. And to remember why we stopped giving." She placed a single white flower at the base of the memorial. The same flower she had placed every year for a decade. "Were they worth it?" the daughter asked. The council. The aliens. Was any of it worth what we lost? Bora thought about the question for a long time. She thought about the lives saved and the lives lost, the good they had done and the contempt they had received. No, she finally said, they were not worth it. But we were. We learned who we were. We learned what we deserved. And we found a better path. She took her daughter's hand, and together they walked away from the memorial. Behind them, the stars shone cold and bright in the darkening sky. The universe continued on, indifferent to the empires that rose and fell, the civilizations that lived and died. Humanity had found peace. The council had found only silence. And in the end, that was exactly how it should have been.